Before we begin, I'd just like to say that this video is totally not a parody of Sliphantom's Unicum guides for World of Tanks, and that they totally did not inspire me to do this video. You also should totally not check out his channel, because he makes totally awful videos. Let's begin. In this game, the Nissan Skyline R32 GTR is the perfect starter car for any JDM fan who needs a reliable S1 car. It's fast, grippy, and most importantly, very easy to drive. You could also use it for A-Class, but like many other all-wheel drive cars, the Sky Surfer starts at a relatively high PI, which makes getting a nice balance of both power and control a bit hard. And because of that, you will lose two other rear-wheel drives and front-wheel drives if they are being driven by competent players, which doesn't really happen much, so you will still win 80% of the time, because most of the people who play this game wouldn't be the sharpest tool in the shed, even if that shed housed nothing but plastic spoons. But regardless, that's not where the car excels. The skyscraper shines in S1 road racing, where most other cars you'll be driving against will also be all-wheel drive. At first, this might not really make a lot of sense. After all, if there's anything we can learn from the Skywalker in real life, is that it was made to bully rear-wheel drives and front-wheel drives. Something that the Germans did first, like they always do. But in Forza, the exact opposite happens in A-Class. As I've said before, the Skybox is very easy to drive, and a great learning platform for beginners. All it needs is a competent player. One that does not forget that, for all intents and purposes, this car is, to every single extent of the word, a brick. It's big. It's heavy. It's understeery. But because the car is so big, you have a longer wheelbase, which makes it less twitchy and easier to drive. Because the car is so heavy, it's grippy. The brakes kind of suck because of its weight, but since you'll be building the car for S1, getting weight reduction will help. And finally, because the car is so understeery, that means you won't have to deal with oversteer, which is harder to correct than understeer. A little bonus about this car is that because it's all-wheel drive, you will have an advantage on snow events and free-roam rush, if you're lucky. Also, if you make a mistake, you can easily get away with it, because you won't have to deal with the wheel spin you usually get from rear and front wheel drive cars. But just because you can get away with making mistakes, it doesn't mean you should keep making them. To teach you how to avoid them, we have brought here our studio's professional racing driver. Some say he managed to make a Tesla somehow run on fossil fuel. All we know is he is Sans from Undertale. Let's watch. Before you enter a corner, brake. You might have to brake a bit earlier than you're used to for this car, because it's so heavy. Downshift as you're braking, but don't be as aggressive with your shifts. Sometimes, it is better to stay at low revs to help prevent wheel spin, but if you're not afraid of that, then downshift as normal. Because you are not a slippery rear wheel drive, you can get back on the throttle much earlier than usual, but don't be impatient. Wait until you've hit the apex, and then gradually apply the throttle. Good throttle management is the key to maximizing exit speed. If you apply the throttle too early, your car will understeer. Thankfully, understeer is very easy to correct in all-wheel drive cars. Just let go of the throttle, and get back on it once you feel like you're in the right line. If you're too aggressive with the throttle, your wheels will spin, causing you to slide towards the outside of the corner. Although you will probably get away with this mistake, it will make you lose speed. If you feel like you don't have good enough throttle control to prevent this, staying on low revs will prevent any wheel spin, even if you match the throttle. But be careful to not let your revs fall too low, or you will lose a lot of speed coming out of the corner. Your biggest weakness along high-speed corners, as you are very likely to slide out of the road or understeer. For these corners, you need to have some extra patience with your throttle. Stepping on the throttle at high speeds will make you go straight, which isn't really what you want in a corner. If you keep this in mind, you should be good. Now that you've mastered all of this, it's time to move to the car itself. Thank you for showing us how to drive, Sans from Undertale. As I've said before, you could use this car for A-Class, but it excels in S1. Start by getting race tires, and because the car is all-wheel drive, make all of the tires as thick as you can. The more rubber you have putting that power down, the better. Track width always helps, so get that. For drivetrain, get race clutch, transmission, and differential. We will come back for the driveline later, as always. Get race brakes, suspension, and anti-roll bars. Roll cage is not necessary. Because the car will be S1, you might as well get race weight reduction already, as the car will obviously not make it to the top of S1 without it. Now for the engine parts. As usual, get race camshafts and exhaust as your first upgrade. Because this car has twin turbos, get those next. Now that you've got the 3 most important engine upgrades, and already have race weight reduction, you have 3 possible paths. The first path is to get a wide body kit for your car. Getting a wider wheelbase should help your car with handling, but it will bump up your PI, and in my opinion, the Skyrocket already has good enough handling without it, so it's not worth sacrificing power to get it. Alternatively, you could just get it for the looks. You fucking 12-year. The second path is to be a little bitch and use Forza Aero on the car to grip every corner, even though all Forza Aero does is bump up your PI, make your car understeer like crazy, and go slower in a straight line. The Skyboard has more than enough grip to stay on the road without downforce. All it needs is a driver with good throttle management. Only bad players need Forza Aero to stay on the road. You can be just as fast, if not faster, without it. Also, it looks like shit. The third option is to be a macho alpha male and dump the rest of your PI into nothing else but power. The car already has great handling and grip, so all you need is as much power as you can get. Max out every engine upgrade except for intercooler and oil and cooling. If you've done everything correctly, you should be at 898 PI, which should be more than enough to get whatever shitty racer rims or body kit you want on your car. But if you're happy with the way your car looks, then get a race intercooler, followed by the best driveline you can get. In this case, a sport driveline. Now that you're done shopping at Bootleg Nismo, it's time to tune your car to perfection. For gearing, adjust your final drive towards acceleration until your top speed is around 200 miles per hour or 320 kilometers per hour. For alignment, I like having -2.5 degrees of camber in the front and -2 degrees on the back. I also get +1 toe in the front and -1 toe in the rear. This will help you in cornering. For ride height, any is fine, just don't slam it to the ground. And lastly, get 90% braking force pressure so that your brakes don't lock up. And that's it. If you feel like all of that was too complicated, you can just download my tune from the Forza storefront. My gamer tag is Flamethrower XXX. Now that your Skylight is ready, go get some podium finishes. And remember to not bully rear wheel drives too hard, or else you'll get banned from racing for literally being too good of a car. Thank you Australia, and thank you for watching.